Have you ever been scrolling Instagram Reels or your X feed or your TikTok if you use TikTok, and you come across a video that is super pro-union from the outset? It has a lot of bright and shiny buzzwords that pique your interest. It encourages a very pro-union discourse, but still leaves out just enough details to keep you uninformed on the matter. I have. And if you're like me, you find it incredibly frustrating. So let's talk about union propaganda in modern day culture, how unions have adapted their message to be TikTok palatable, and what it really means. As our culture overall has become more chronically online, all businesses, organizations, and other groups have had to adapt to stay relevant. Unfortunately, this very much has become an adapt or die situation where if you don't embrace some form of necessary digital footprint, you can risk losing all that you've worked for. And I don't think that's hyperbole to say. What's also not hyperbole to say is that pro-union discourse has found a foothold online that they intend to keep. As part of my job, I look for union stories. I scour as many platforms as I can, trying to seek out information on what is happening with government sector, public sector unions. And while I know exactly what I'm looking at and what I'm looking for, oftentimes I find a whole lot of stuff that is simply unusable because it's incorrect. It paints the union in a more positive light than what is true. And generally speaking, with written articles like media, it's easier for the common consumer to see through the BS. With that said, sometimes you even need a really sharp eye to distinguish and discern what you're reading versus what's true. But video media, on the other hand, is incredibly deceptive in a way that's easier for the basic consumer to watch and not understand what's being told to them or what they're actually seeing. Videos are more engaging and interesting than written content, and when done well, that video propaganda is extremely convincing. So imagine, you're scrolling across your TikTok, you just watched a video that made you laugh or smile. Maybe it was cute, maybe it was funny, maybe it was a video of someone falling down that made you crack up. Maybe you're someone who doesn't know a whole lot about the union movement, you're not thinking about it, you're not diving into it, and you see this.
It isn't about left or right, it's about workers, working people. We need to rebuild America, man. We need to rebuild our value and our values.
Or this.
If you just graduated high school, you're in your 20s or 30s with no direction in life.
Or this.
This is what solidarity looks like, and we will be back for everyone else. Free them all.
The average person would choose to watch maybe the first 5 seconds of those videos before scrolling. Unless, of course, they were avid followers of that account, in which case they're more likely to watch more. But still, 5 seconds maybe seems like an inconsequential amount of time, and it is, sure, in the grand scheme of things. But still, what do we learn about those videos in the first 5 seconds? The first tells us that we need to rebuild America through unions. The second says its top advice is to join a union. And the last uses words like solidarity and free to kind of catch our attention. So if I'm the average Jane scrolling TikTok and I watch the first 5 seconds and then keep scrolling, subconsciously, it's been planted in me that unions, with no discernment or any other additional information volunteered or required, that unions are good for America, are the best choice for me, are associated with freedom and justice, and encourage brotherly or sisterly values. What we don't learn in those first 5 seconds is how this discourse is innately deceptive and that the only ones profiting off of it are government sector unions. The first 2 videos are from workers on TikTok who work in building construction and trades, which is the private sector. The private sector is where unionization originally started, and it continues to be a necessary part of work in that sector. Here at Freedom Foundation, we don't work with or deal with private sector unions at all. But the third video is from an Instagram account that generally produces a lot of pro-union content on public sector unions. And that lady speaking in it is actually the president of SEIU Local 925 in Seattle, Washington. I have a whole video where I go into the differences between the different union sectors, but the point is here that you can't tell the difference in these videos unless you are really looking for them. Even in the first video, which is very patriotic and very compelling, you can't really tell that the guy is saying rebuild America in a literal building sense until you get like 60 seconds in, or you take the time to click on the comments and read the tags, which say stuff like hashtag construction, hashtag blue collar, hashtag build, hashtag hard work. Why is this important? But this is important because the sectors of work are explicitly different. There is no crossover. There is no gray area at all. I mean, in nature of work, in money, in structure, literally everything. But if you, the average Joe or Jane, start to believe in any sense that those 2 sectors of work are one and the same or even a little bit similar, The only people who benefit from you thinking that are government unions. There is a largely positive nature when it comes to talking about private sector union work. Like I said, they were important in the origins of unionization. In the Industrial Revolution, when private sector factory work was just becoming a thing, unions stepped in and they did argue for reasonable pay and reasonable working conditions. Their involvement was both necessary and important. But public unions, who were neither necessary or important back then, nor are even today, latch onto that greater discourse because it helps boost their own image. Many organizations, not just individual creators, have fallen prey to this discourse and propaganda and have added to the conversation in a big way. And having the eye to distinguish this manufactured gray area, what I'll call it, is really important. So I'm going to try and go through a few different accounts that I found to show you exactly what I mean. There's a big Instagram account that I've talked about before that I've responded to as well called Labor on the Line, who is extremely guilty of this. And before even watching any videos, I can look at their account and immediately tell you what is a comment on public sector versus what is a comment on private sector. So looking at Labor on the Line, we can tell immediately what is private sector versus what is public sector. I'm not going to click on anything. I'm just going to do a brief little overview. But it says, one of the top ones, it says, revealed the twisted real story behind Amazon's rise. Amazon as a company, no matter how you feel about them, is private sector. So that's a private sector union. Scrolling down, Texas Hilton hotel workers on strike. Hotel chains are privately owned, so private sector. And then a few next to that, it says federal unionists. Federal means government, so this is a government public sector union commentary. What else? Google workers. Google is a private sector company, so it's private sector. And while it might not seem like a big deal to have these all lumped together on the same page, it's important because for anyone who doesn't have a discerning eye, it all ranks it in terms of the same level of importance, if you will. With the same commentary, it has the same tone. Anyone who is uninformed about the matter or looking to be more informed, maybe about these different union issues or public sector or private sector specific issues, they're going to walk away being just as uninformed as they were when they got there because everything is lumped together and there is no discernment between the public sector or the private sector of work. Another organization I found that's called Labor Strong Live or Labor Strong Live, I'm not exactly sure what it's meant to be referred to here. It really doesn't matter. It's semantics. But this is a union Instagram account that I found that when I originally came across it, I really wasn't sure if it was public sector or private sector. I kind of had to do some digging and take 30 seconds to really walk through each post and see what it was talking about. Since then, they posted something that makes it clear on where they stand. They posted this very first post. I'm not going to play any sound, but it says, breaking, nearly 32,000 home care workers win election to join SEIU Healthcare Michigan. SEIU, Service Employees International Union, is public sector, government sector. But aside from that, they have a whole bunch of posts. It's like 8 or 9 in a row that talk about the trades. Trades are private sector. So I saw those and I said, okay, interesting. That's awesome. We love trades. We love women in trades. Let's go. That's awesome. Then you keep clicking through it. And they have a couple of these different things. They had a post on the incredible time they had at the New York Labor Day Parade honoring contributions of labor leaders and hardworking people. I was like, okay, cool. Hardworking people. We love that. And then you keep clicking through it, and there are a few more things. And there's one that I came across that said, great to see PFT Local 3 at Labor Day. PFT is Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, which is a division of AFT and also a division of AFL-CIO, which is a government sector public union work. So, and then it keeps going on. They have a whole bunch of those where it's mainly, actually they have a guy one of his TikToks that I pulled up earlier. The most frustrating part about all of this to me is that this influence hurts the work of the private sector so badly, and they don't even realize it. Take me, for example. I mean, now that I understand just how destructive government sector, public sector unions have been able to be, when I see something that is pro-union, that does not discern between the sectors of work that there are, I am predisposed to be way more negative about that media, at least until I can figure out what sector of work it is coming from. Realistically, I have nothing against private sector union work, nothing against it at all. And if I see a private union doing their job and bargaining well for their members, I should be able to celebrate that and laud the blessings of having a capitalist society where unions can come together to do the job that they're supposed to do, which is an important job in the private sector. But because of the influence of government unions, when I see a piece of pro-union media, I am immediately prone to negativity and skepticism until I can figure out what that sector of work is being referred to in this piece of pro-union media. And I know I'm not the only one who struggles with this or who has felt the fruit of what the unions have done. The consequence of this muddled conversation really goes both ways too. Pro-union people are more likely to be pro-union across the board. Anti-union people are more likely to be anti-union across the board. That's just how it works. And that's the big deal, is that we all should be pro-private sector union and anti-public sector union. That's what it should be. But the discourse will never be allowed to be that nuanced because government unions never want you to understand the nuances between it. They will never allow that to happen. They're the ones who benefit from being dishonest and benefit from that muddled conversation. So they will never let it get to a point where it's clear and where it's nuanced and where it's complex to be able to understand these different key issues in the labor movement. It's so frustrating. This issue has also been amplified on social media immensely. Firstly, the algorithm is controlled to be favorable to certain trends over others. And secondly, union leaders who now have access to the digital age and have founded their own digital footprint are able to be more accessible than ever. You can see a video from a union leader directly on your phone, and that brings down the barrier of the conversation and makes things even more muddy because it's like, oh, they're just a person like me. They're just leading a union. No, they're not. They're leading a public sector union, which does not do the same thing and has never done the same things as the private sector. So again, to show you some examples of what I mean by these union leaders becoming more readily accessible and able to tell you their talking points, there's one that I found. A gal who is a public labor union leader in Minnesota makes videos from her own personal account, and she introduces herself as like, hey, I'm so-and-so, the president of this labor union. I'll play a clip right now.
Hi, I'm Megan. I'm the president of Minnesota's largest public sector labor union. I'm really grateful for this comment.
In a similar vein, but on a larger scale, is the Chicago Teachers Union, who also has their own TikTok, and on it they post everything from official press releases and news to videos of Stacey Davis Gates shouting literal nonsense into a microphone. This is what their page looks like, and I'll play you a clip of one of their videos too.
Donald Trump don't want me, the future me, the Caitlyn.
And in another example of a video, this one's not a TikTok, it's actually an interview, long-form content that proves the same point, where it's NEA President Becky Pringle who's sitting down for an over hour-long video with a smaller creator named At Our Table with Jamie Harrison. And in the early first half of this video, this guy, Jamie Harrison, asked the question of like, why do people not agree with what your union stands for? And it's this exact issue because Becky Pringle, she weaves in, instead of answering the question naturally, she weaves in this interpersonal story about her father, which is, I'm not going to fault her for talking about her father. I love talking about my parents. I talk about my dad all the time. But the point is that she's intermixing these things, and she tries to make it seem like these issues of the public sector that she does is the same as private sector or intrinsic American history, that it's so easy for them to muddle the issues. And whatever, I'll play a few clips of it just so you can see what she says. I'm going to cut out all the time when she's talking about her dad because he asked her the question, like 4 minutes pass, and then she actually starts to answer it with this total random answer.
So knowing how beloved teachers are, why then have we seen such demonization of the organization that represents those teachers?
To answer your question about that, why are they going after teachers? Why? And unions? Well, the NEA is that intersection between both, right? Teachers and unions.
Anyway, this price that we have paid for moving into the digital age has been steep, certainly. I feel like it's easy to think that with the internet, it's brought with it this new, easily accessible vault of information that we can sift through at any time, which therefore might make identifying fiction a little bit easier. But that's not the case. It hasn't. Our world becoming digital has just created shorter attention spans and a far less emphasis on detail and what is so important about it. In layman's terms, I would say that anything can pass the sniff test because the sniff test doesn't exist. We aren't being fed facts, we're being fed pre-chewed conclusions. And swallowing those without answering any questions forfeits any chance to reason through facts and logic by ourselves. Combined with these teeny tiny attention spans, public unions are able to get away with feeding consumers baseless, misleading, or downright dishonest information. Part of the mission here at Freedom Foundation that I'm especially passionate about is education and getting the word out about this. A lot of that is firstly encouraging discernment, which is a quality that our world is severely deficient in. So, ask questions, read the comments, look at the tags, click on the profile, and spend 30 seconds trying to determine if this person is someone you should be taking advice and information from. If we just keep swallowing conclusions from random internet profiles, we will lose the ability to think critically, and that's crucial. Because when we lose the ability to think critically, that is the first freedom to go. Real liberty starts with the courage to investigate, to ask questions, to decide for yourself. That's what this movement is about. We believe at Freedom Foundation that you have the ability to choose. That's why we believe in helping people opt out of their unions, because public sector unions don't think or don't even trust you to be able to make decisions for yourself. It's incredibly frustrating. And when you look at all of the data and all the information on the internet that shows how much this conversation has been muddied and how much they don't trust you to think for yourself, it's sad. When we lose the ability to think for ourselves, that is the first freedom to go. Thanks for watching this episode. My name is Siena Rose, and this is the new Frontline. I'll see you next time.